filtered through the lace curtains of the bedroom where Maria LeBlanc-Tibodeau was braiding her hair in front of the mirror. Only a week ago, she had become Andrew Thibodeau's wife, and now her reflection glowed with quiet happiness. The sun's rays played on her new gold ring as she adjusted her curl. Andrew entered the room with 2 cups of coffee. Placing one in front of his wife, he kissed her gently on the top of her head. "Are you ready for your first Sunday lunch as an official member of the Thibodeau family?" he asked with a smile, though a shadow of worry flickered in his eyes. Maria turned to her husband, accepting the cup. "Nervous for a bit, your father. He's still looking at me like he's trying to figure me out, like he senses something. Dad's just old school." Andrew sat down on the edge of the bed. "He'll get used to it. The important thing is that we love each other, and the rest doesn't matter." Maria nodded, but the anxiety never left her. Andrew was the only person in the town of Saint Aubin who knew of her past, knew and accepted unconditionally. "I'll never stop thanking fate for meeting you," she whispered, squeezing her husband's hand. "I'm the one lucky enough to have such a talented and beautiful wife." Andrew pulled her to him. For a moment, the world outside their small home ceased to exist. The Thibodeau family mansion towered above the other Saint Aubin homes like a constant from another era, with columns, a wide veranda, and oak trees planted by the current owner's great-grandfather. Gareth Thibodeau had inherited not only this house, but also the sawmill, the town's main business, and with it, the status of unspoken leader of the local community. The newlyweds were walking up the veranda steps when Andrew noticed Maria's shoulders tense. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's going to be all right. Mommy adores you." The door swung open before they rang the bell. Veronica Thibodeau, an elegant woman of 55, enclosed her sister-in-law in a hug. "There's our beauty. Come in quickly. I've prepared your favorite Creole dishes, Andrew." The spacious living room breathed family history. Photographs of several generations of Thibodeau watched from the walls. Antique furniture remembered important events, and hunting trophies flaunted on the mantelpiece. And there, by the fireplace, stood Gareth Thibodeau. He was tall, his dark hair graying, his shirt impeccably pressed, even on a Sunday. His face expressed polite cordiality, but his eyes remained wary. "Finally, I thought you'd be late for dinner." He held out his hand to his son, then nodded to Maria. "Father, we're 15 minutes early." Andrew smiled, but a note of tension slipped into his voice. The Thibodeau always arrived half an hour in advance to help with the preparations. "Tradition," Gareth replied, emphasizing the last word. Veronica gently interjected. "Gareth, they've only just gotten married. They need time to themselves." At the dinner table, the conversation flowed unevenly, with periods of lively conversation followed by awkward pauses. Veronica asked Maria about her work at the music school, genuinely admiring her daughter-in-law's talents. "The principal says the student body has doubled since you started teaching," she remarked, as she plied Maria with jambalaya. "The kids love music. They just need to be shown how to approach it," Maria replied, smiling gratefully. "Thinking of staying at the school for long?" Gareth asked suddenly, cutting off a piece of meat. "Or is this a temporary solution?" Maria met his gaze. "I love teaching, Mr. Thibodeau." "Gareth, please, we're family now." His smile didn't touch his eyes. "It's just amazing how quickly you've become your own in our little town. Andrew tells me you met in New Orleans not long ago." "A little over a year ago," Andrew confirmed. "Sometimes a moment is enough to realize you've met your fate." "How romantic," Gareth remarked with faint irony. "And your family, Maria? Do they live far away?" Maria's face froze for a moment, but she quickly pulled herself together. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. There's no one else of my family left." A flicker of sympathy flashed in Veronica's eyes. "What a hard time you've had, dear." "I'm surprised you've never mentioned it before," Gareth muttered, scrutinizing his sister-in-law's face. "Father," Andrew interjected sharply, "it's a sore subject for Maria." Gareth raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Of course, I apologize. I just want to get to know better the woman who has so suddenly become part of our family. After lunch, Andrew and Maria stepped out onto the veranda. The neat lawns of the estate spread out around them, with the rooftops of Saint Aubin's visible in the distance. Your father doesn't approve of me, Maria said quietly. He doesn't think anyone is good enough for his son. Andrew put his arm around her shoulders. Besides, I ruined his plans when I refused to take over the family business and went to New Orleans to study architecture. And now you've come home with a stranger no one knows anything about, Maria continued. With the woman I love, Andrew replied firmly. Everything will be fine, I promise. Meanwhile, in the study, Gareth was pouring bourbon into 2 glasses. Veronica watched her husband anxiously. Why are you being so cold to her? She asked, taking a drink. Something's not right about her. Gareth sipped his bourbon. No, I'm not arguing. She's beautiful, educated, perfectly mannered. But there's something about her that's elusive, a secret. Everyone has secrets, Gareth. You can't go through life with a completely open mind. But not everyone has them deep enough to make you erase the entire past. Have you noticed? Not a single mention of a past life before I met Andrew. No childhood friends, no university buddies. She talked about her parents. A convenient explanation, Gareth interrupted. There's no way to check. It's embarrassing to ask. You're acting like she's a criminal, Veronica was indignant. Our son is happy for the first time in a long time. Isn't that enough? Not enough if happiness is built on lies, Gareth retorted. And I'm going to find out what that is. While the family drama was unfolding at the Thibodeau mansion, on the other side of Saint Aubin, Detective Samantha Rogers was entering the police station. A short woman with short brown hair and attentive brown eyes, she stood out among the local cops with her urban manner of dress and bearing. Police Chief Bill Montgomery, a heavy-set man with a mustache, tore himself away from his papers as she entered his office. Detective Rogers, how do you like our little town? Quiet, Samantha replied, taking a seat. Too quiet after New Orleans. That's what you came here for, isn't it? To rest up after that high-profile case. Samantha smiled weakly. The brass called it a temporary transfer to regain my composure. In reality, an honorable exile. Well, there's rarely anything more serious than burglaries and drunken brawls in our area. It's good for recovery. Where are we on the Perkins store break-in case? Montgomery waved his hand. Teenagers wanted to steal beer. Parents have already made restitution. So the day's free then? You can explore the town. By the way, there is a benefit dinner at the church tonight. Great chance to meet the locals. I'll be sure to stop by, Samantha nodded. In the evening, St. Aubin's church hall was full. The townspeople, dressed in smart clothes, discussed the latest news while helping themselves to homemade pastries. Samantha, feeling like a stranger in this tight-knit community, slowly made her way along the table of hors d'oeuvres. You must be the new detective. A pleasant female voice sounded nearby. Samantha turned around and saw an elegant couple, a middle-aged man and woman. Samantha Rogers. She held out her hand. Veronica Thibodeau. And this is my husband, Gareth. We heard you were visiting from New Orleans. News travels fast in small towns? Samantha smiled. That's both a blessing and a curse, Gareth remarked. It's hard to hide anything here. Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a young couple. Andrew held Maria's hand as if protecting her from prying eyes. And here are our son and daughter-in-law, Veronica introduced proudly. They were married just a week ago. Samantha noticed how Gareth tensed at the sight of Maria, how Veronica's eyes warmed as she looked at her son, the usual family dynamic with its undercurrents. Congratulations on your marriage, she said sincerely. Thank you, Maria smiled, and there was a special softness in her smile. You're new here, as am I. Detective Rogers came from New Orleans, Gareth explained, watching his sister-in-law's reaction carefully. Perhaps your paths crossed there. New Orleans is a big city, Maria replied calmly, but Samantha noticed her fingers trembling as she clutched her glass. The detective was investigating that high-profile murder case in the Garden District. Gareth continued. How do you know that? Samantha wondered. I read the news, Gareth shrugged. Besides, I have business connections all over the state. Impressive work, detective. Thank you, although the outcome was mixed. Justice is rarely black and white, Gareth remarked with sudden understanding. Andrew, noticing the tension, interjected gently. Father, Maria and I wanted to tell you about our plans. Really? Said Gareth's eyebrows rose. And what are they? We've decided to buy the McGregor house on Maple Avenue. It's been vacant for a long time in need of renovation, but Maria and I see potential in it. Gareth's face froze. That rundown Victorian mansion? Why? When our house is full of space. We need our own space, Father. Besides, I can put my architectural skills to good use. I thought we agreed you'd start getting up to speed on the sawmill. The Thibodeaux have always lived in the family mansion. Times change, Father, Andrew said softly but firmly. Gareth shifted his gaze to Maria. I suppose that's your influence. It's our mutual decision, Andrew interjected, and Samantha noticed how instantly he rose to his wife's defense. Of course it is, Gareth said dryly. Your shared decision to destroy a tradition that is over 100 years old. Gareth, Veronica began cautioningly. It's all right, Andrew smiled at his mother. We understand that change doesn't come easy. Samantha watched the unfolding family scene with professional interest. In her years as a detective, she had learned to see the unspoken in gestures, glances, pauses between words, and now she could clearly sense the tension between Gareth and the young couple. Classic generational conflict heightened by something deeper, more personal. I think we should get going, Andrew glanced at his watch. Maria nodded with relief. We promised to stop by James's place to listen to some new records, she explained in response to Veronica's questioning look. James? Gareth asked sharply. James Wilson, the music store owner, Andrew explained. He's been inviting us to a jazz night. You know him, Father? Of course I do, Gareth nodded, but something akin to disbelief flashed in his eyes. As the young couple left, Veronica apologized to Samantha. I apologize for that scene. This is the first time our son has shown independence. It's not easy for Gareth. It's hard to let children go, Samantha remarked diplomatically. Especially when you're not sure it's for their benefit, Gareth added. Samantha looked at him carefully. Your sister-in-law makes a favorable impression. Appearances can be deceiving, detective. In your profession, you should know that better than anyone else. Gareth, Veronica was indignant. Just stating a fact, dear. Gareth's gaze, fixed on the door behind which Andrew and Maria had hidden, was full of the determination of a man ready to defend his world at any cost. The look sent a chill down Samantha's spine, a professional premonition that had never deceived her. What she didn't know yet was that it wouldn't be long before that hunch would be fully realized. Gareth Thibodeau sat in his office, poring over photographs sent by a private investigator from New Orleans. In the pictures was Maria, but not the Maria Saint Aubin knew. The photos, dated 5 years earlier, showed a young man named Marco LeBlanc entering the conservatory. Gareth ran his finger over the image, looking for a resemblance to the woman who had recently become his son's wife. Same expressive eyes, same lip line, but everything else was completely different. He set the photographs aside and picked up the report. Marco LeBlanc, a gifted pianist, hailed from a small town in northern Louisiana. His parents had indeed died, but not in a car accident, but in a fire. After their deaths, Marco moved to New Orleans, enrolled in a conservatory. And then 3 years ago, Marco disappeared. And about the same time, a talented pianist, Maria LeBlanc, appeared in New Orleans musical circles. Gareth felt a wave of anger rising inside. His son, the heir to the Thibodeau family, had married a man who had tricked his way into their lives, into their home. Andrew was supposed to continue the dynasty to have children who would inherit the family business. Instead, he tied his life to a deceiver. "Mr. Thibodeau," the receptionist peeked in the door, "you have a visitor." A tall, gray-haired man in an impeccable suit entered the office. "Juge," Gareth rose to meet his old friend. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Judge Harrison Williams, the oldest member of the county council and longtime friend of the Thibodeau family, nodded gravely. "Your message sounded alarming. What happened?" Gareth silently handed him the folder containing the detective's report. Judge Williams slowly studied the contents, his face growing increasingly grim. "Is this confirmed?" The detective conducted a thorough investigation. "There is no doubt." The judge handed the folder back. "And what do you intend to do?" "Put an end to this. Andrew needs to know the truth. He can't live a lie." "And if he already knows?" The judge's question struck Gareth like a blow. "What? Andrew is a smart guy. He's probably aware and has made a conscious decision." Gareth shook his head. "Impossible. He couldn't have consciously chosen this." "Anyway," the judge put a hand on his friend's shoulder, "be careful. Times are changing, Gareth. What is unacceptable to you and me, a new generation may perceive differently. Some things are immutable, Judge. Family honor, tradition, the continuation of the lineage. Keep that in mind when making decisions." The judge headed for the door, but stopped. "And be prepared that Andrew may make choices you don't like." After his friend left, Gareth sat motionless for a long time looking at the photographs, then resolutely gathered them up and headed for his son's house. Andrew and Maria were living in an outbuilding of the manor house while renovations were underway on their new home. When Gareth knocked, Maria opened the door. Seeing the look on his face, she stepped back. "Is Andrew home?" Gareth asked, stepping inside uninvited. "He's in the shower," Maria replied cautiously. "Has something happened?" "Happened." Gareth looked at her coldly. "I found out who you really are, Marco." Maria's face went pale as a sheet. She struggled to take a breath but didn't take her eyes away. "I've always been Maria inside. Marco was the name I was given at birth, but it never reflected who I really am." "Don't try to set my teeth on edge with that nonsense," Gareth gritted his teeth. "You deceived my son, sneaked into our family by deception." "I haven't deceived anyone." Her voice trembled, but there was firmness in it. "Andrew knows everything about me. From day one, what do I know?" Andrew came out of the bathroom, toweling his hair as he walked. Seeing his father and his wife's startled face, he immediately stepped between them. "What's going on?" Gareth threw the pictures on the table. "Did you know your wife is actually a man?" Andrew looked at the pictures, then calmly put the towel down. "I know my wife is a transgender woman who lived a life that wasn't her own for years before she had the courage to be herself." Gareth looked at his son, not believing his ears. "And you? You accepted that, consciously?" "I love Maria," Andrew answered simply. "Her past is part of what made her the person I've come to love." "Do you realize what that means for our family?" Gareth raised his voice. "No children, no continuation of the Thibodeau lineage. All for what? For a perverted fantasy?" "Father," Andrew cut him off sharply, "I will not allow you to insult my wife." "Wife!" Gareth laughed bitterly. "That's not a wife. That's a man in a dress. Look at the pictures, Andrew. Face the truth." "I face the truth every day," Andrew replied quietly. "And the truth is that Maria is the truest, bravest person I know. And about the kids, we're planning an adoption when we're ready." "Adoption?" Gareth shook his head. "The Thibodeau lineage have always passed on their blood, their family name. Times are changing, Father, and family is about love, not just blood. These modern ideas will destroy everything we've built for generations." Maria, who had been silently watching the altercation until then, stepped forward gently. "Mr. Thibodeau, I understand your anger. This is a shock to you. But I love your son with all my heart and will take care of him for the rest of his life. Don't you dare talk to me about love, Gareth hissed. You have ruined my son's life. That's enough. Andrew stood in front of his wife. I'm asking you to leave, Father. Now. Andrew, go away. We'll talk when you've calmed down. Gareth slowly headed for the door, stopping on the threshold. This isn't over, son. I will not allow our family's name to be dishonored. Returning home, Gareth found Veronica in the living room with a book. Seeing the look on his face, she put the reading aside. What happened? Did you know? He asked bluntly. Knew that this, Maria, was born a man? Veronica hesitated a second, just long enough for Gareth to realize the answer. You knew? He sat down across from his wife, clenching his fists. Andrew told me after the engagement, Veronica admitted quietly. He was afraid you wouldn't understand, and he was right to be afraid. How could you keep it from me? How could you let this marriage happen? Because our son is happy, Gareth, really happy. Isn't that what we've wanted for him all his life? I wanted a real family for him, a wife to bear children, to carry on the family line. Family isn't just about children, Gareth. It's love, support, loyalty. Don't repeat those fashionable slogans. Gareth rose to his feet. I will not allow this deception to continue. What are you going to do? Alarm sounded in Veronica's voice. What I have to. Protect my son and my family. Gareth spent the next few days watching Maria from afar. He watched her leave for work at the music school in the morning, her conversations with the students, her lunch with Andrew at the little cafe on the main street. His anger grew each day, fueled by the sight of the people of Saint Aubin's greeting her in a friendly manner, unaware of her deception. On Thursday evening, Gareth sat in his car across the street from the music school, waiting for classes to end. He watched one by one as the students left the building, as the other teachers left. In his hand he clutched a pistol, an old revolver he had inherited from his father. This has to end today, he whispered when there were only 3 cars left in the parking lot. Soon Maria came out, carrying a folder of sheet music. She lingered by her car, searching in her bag for her keys as Gareth stepped out of the shadows. Mr. Thibodeau? Maria turned around in surprise. I've been thinking for a long time, Gareth said slowly as he approached. Thinking about what's best for Andrew, for our family. Maria's eyes widened as she noticed the gun in his hand. Gareth, what are you doing? What I should have done as soon as I found out the truth. You're ruining my son's life, dishonoring our family. That's not true. Maria took a small step back. Love Andrew. I make him happy. Happy? Gareth grinned bitterly. You deceived him, made him live a lie. What kind of happiness can there be that's built on deception? I never lied to Andrew. He knew everything about me from the beginning. And he still chose this? Gareth shook his head. So you're an even worse influence on him than I thought. Gareth, please. Maria held out her hand pleadingly. Let's have a conversation. Not here, but talking is over. Gareth raised his gun. You've left me no choice. Don't do this. Andrew won't forgive you. In time he'll understand, and he'll be grateful. Maria tried to take cover behind the car, but it was too late. A shot rang out, then a second. She fell to the asphalt, clutching her hands to her chest, where a dark stain was quickly blurring. Why? She whispered, looking at Gareth with fading eyes. Gareth watched in silence as the life left her body. He didn't notice the surveillance camera glowing dimly over the entrance to the school, impassively recording what was happening. The next morning, Detective Samantha Rogers was called to the crime scene. Maria LeBlanc-Tibodeau's body still lay where she had died, now surrounded by yellow police tape. The medical examiner was bent over the body, and police officers were interviewing the school watchman who had discovered the body. What do we have? Samantha asked, approaching Chief Montgomery. Maria LeBlanc-Tibodeau, 30-year-old music teacher killed by 2 gunshots to the chest last night around 9 o'clock. Watchmen found the body at 6 this morning. Witnesses? None. But, Montgomery nodded at the school building. There's a camera above the entrance. She must have taken over the parking lot. Have you checked the footage? The tech is working on it right now. Samantha leaned over the body, studying the dead woman's face. Was there class last night? Yes, until 8. According to the principal, Maria was often late getting ready for the next day. Did anyone see her arguing with anyone? Were there any threats? Nothing like that so far. Everyone describes her as a sweet, talented woman with no enemies. The medical examiner looked up at the detective. Shots fired at close range. No professional training on the part of the shooter. Not an accurate hit to the heart. Time of death? Between 8 o'clock and 10 p.m. Has the husband been notified yet? Officer Johnson went to the Thibodeau house. At that moment, a young technician approached them. Detective, you should see this. In the small school security room, Samantha stared at the computer screen where the camera footage was playing. The clear image showed Maria standing outside her car and Gareth Thibodeau heading toward her with a gun. Although the camera didn't record sound, you could tell from their lips that they were talking about something. Then Gareth raised his gun and fired twice. Gareth Thibodeau's car is on the footage of the entrance to the school grounds, the technician reported. Motive? Chief Montgomery asked, watching the screen. That's what I'm going to find out. Samantha stood up. Prepare an arrest warrant. I'll go to the Thibodeau house. When Samantha arrived at the mansion, a police car was already there. Officer Johnson met her at the entrance with a grim face. The husband of the victim just heard the news. He's in shock. And his father in the study, completely calm. Too calm, if you know what I mean. Samantha nodded and walked into the house. From the living room came the sounds of sobbing. It was Veronica Thibodeau hugging her son, trying to comfort the inconsolable grief. Samantha walked past them into the study where Gareth Thibodeau sat at his desk, staring into nothing. Mr. Thibodeau. Samantha closed the door behind her. I need to ask you some questions about last night. Of course, Detective. He looked up with a look of neither fear nor remorse in his eyes. What can I do for you? Where were you last night between 8 and 10 p.m.? Here at home, working on some paperwork. Can anyone confirm that? Veronica was home and the maid, she leaves at 10. Did you leave the house at that time? No. Samantha looked at him carefully. Mr. Thibodeau, your sister-in-law was murdered last night in the parking lot of the music school. I already know, the officer informed us. Do you have any idea who might have done it? None. That's odd, because we have surveillance video. It clearly shows you shooting Maria. Gareth's face didn't waver. If it's true, I see no point in denying it. Why did you do it? Gareth rose from the table, walked to the window. Beyond him spread the land that had belonged to the Thibodeau family for over a century. You're not from here, Detective. You don't understand what it means to protect a family's heritage, tradition, honor. Enlighten me. Maria LeBlanc was a fraud. She, Gareth stammered, choosing his words, she was a transgender woman? Samantha calmly finished for him. Gareth turned sharply. Did you know? No, but that explains your motive. She deceived my son, forced him to live a lie. I couldn't let it go on. Her son knew the truth. He made a conscious decision. He was blinded by feelings. He didn't understand the consequences. I protected him. By killing the man he loved? That's not protection, Mr. Thibodeau. He may not realize it now, but in time, Samantha shook her head. Gareth Thibodeau, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Maria LeBlanc-Tibodeau. You have the right to remain silent. Gareth didn't resist as his wrists were cuffed. He looked almost peaceful, like a man who had done what he felt was his duty. As he was being led out of the office, Andrew appeared in the hallway. His face was contorted with grief and rage. How could you? He asked hoarsely, looking at his father with tear-stained eyes. In time you will understand, son. I did it for you. For me." Andrew laughed a terrible, lifeless laugh. "You killed the one person who made me happy, the man I loved more than life." "It was an illusion," Gareth said firmly. "No, Father, the illusion was your world, your outdated notions of honor and tradition. The real thing was her. What was real was our love. Andrew, I'm not your son anymore." Andrew turned away and walked away. Gareth was led outside where curious neighbors and reporters had gathered. The news of the young music teacher's death had already traveled all over town. And now there was a shocking twist. The killer was one of Saint Aubin's most respected men. As the police officers put Gareth into the patrol car, Samantha watched him. She saw no remorse in his eyes, no understanding of the gravity of what he had done, only the certainty of self-righteousness, the most dangerous and destructive of human delusions. "Detective," Chief Montgomery called out to her. "Yes? Judge Williams wants to talk to you." He said Gareth met with him the night before the murder. Samantha nodded. "Good. I want to know everything that led to this tragedy." The car with Gareth pulled away. Through the window, Samantha could see his straight back and proudly raised head. She knew such men rarely changed their beliefs. He would be put behind bars, but he would consider himself a martyr, a defender of tradition and family values. And somewhere in the big house, a man who had lost his beloved wife to other people's hatred and intolerance was crying. Samantha sighed. In her 20 years as a police officer, she had seen many crimes committed in the name of love, jealousy, greed. But crimes committed out of prejudice had always seemed particularly senseless and cruel to her. "Detective," a young woman with a notebook approached her, a reporter for the local newspaper. "May I ask a few questions?" "No comment at this stage of the investigation." "Is it true that the victim was transgender?" Samantha looked at her with a long stare. The victim was human, a talented musician, a favorite wife, a good teacher. Nothing else mattered. Leaving the confused journalist behind, Samantha got into her car. A conversation with Judge Williams awaited her, gathering more evidence, preparing the case for the prosecutor's office. The usual process that follows every murder. But her thoughts were elsewhere, on how many more tragedies would have to occur before people learned to see beyond the labels and stereotypes to the real person. In the rearview mirror, she saw Veronica Thibodeau leaving the house, supporting her crying son. 2 lives shattered by one man's prejudices, and somewhere in the morgue lay a third victim, Maria, whose only fault was that she had dared to be herself in a world that wasn't yet ready to accept her. Samantha started the engine. It was going to be a long day. The Saint Aubin County Courthouse had rarely seen such a crowd. Despite the early morning hours, the courtroom was packed. Residents of the city, journalists from New Orleans, human rights activists, they had all come for the preliminary hearing of Gareth Tibodeau, a respected businessman accused of murdering his sister-in-law. Samantha Rogers sat in the front row, looking through the case file. In the week since Gareth's arrest, she had gathered such compelling evidence that the prosecutor was confident the prosecution would succeed. The surveillance footage, the gun found in Thibodeau's house, the gunpowder residue on the defendant's hands, everything pointed to his guilt. But Samantha wasn't worried about guilt. That was clear. She was concerned with the question of motive, with the psychological reasons that pushed a good citizen to such a terrible crime. The door opened, and Gareth Thibodeau was led into the hall. A week's imprisonment had not broken him. He held himself upright and dignified. His gaze slid around the room, lingering for a moment on his son and wife, seated apart from the rest of the audience. Andrew didn't look at his father. It was as if he had aged 10 years in the past week. His eyes were blank, his movements mechanical. Veronica held her son's hand, her face hidden by a dark veil. The Thibodeau family, once the epitome of prosperity and success, was now at the center of a tragedy that divided the entire city. "All rise, court is now in session," the bailiff announced. Judge Matthews, a middle-aged woman with shrewd eyes, took her seat. She was known for her fairness and strictness, and Samantha was glad she was the one assigned the case. Case number 1258, Fraction 25, State of Louisiana, v. Gareth-Thibodeau. Is the defendant present? Are the parties' representatives ready? The familiar ritual of the trial began. Introduction of the parties, reading of the charges, questioning of the plea. "How do you wish to answer the charge, Mr. Thibodeau?" the judge asked. Gareth stood up. His voice sounded clear and firm. "I admit fact, but not guilt." A whisper rippled through the hall. The judge tapped her gavel. "Silence. Explain your position, Mr. Thibodeau." "I do not deny that I shot Maria LeBlanc, but I do not consider myself guilty of a crime. I acted to protect my family's honor, my son's future." The judge looked closely at the defendant. "In the state of Louisiana, defending honor is not grounds for murder, Mr. Thibodeau." "Prosecutor, present your argument for pretrial detention." Prosecutor Davidson, a man with an impressive record, rose. "Your Honor, the defendant is a danger to the community. He committed a cold-blooded murder, planned in advance. The evidence points irrefutably to his guilt. In addition, the motive for the crime, rejection of the victim's gender identity, constitutes an aggravating circumstance. We ask the court to refuse bail." Gareth's attorney, an elderly man named Pearson, objected. "My client is a respected member of the community, with a business that gives jobs to half the city. He is not a danger. This tragic accident was the result of exceptional circumstances." "Exceptional circumstances?" The judge raised an eyebrow. "What kind of circumstances?" "My client learned that his son was involved in a deception that could have affected the family's honor and the future of the family business. He acted in a state of severe emotional distress." The prosecutor interjected. "The victim did not commit any deception. Andrew Thibodeau knew about his wife's past. It's corroborated by testimony." "Nevertheless," Pearson parried, "this came as a shock to my client and his reaction. His reaction was to kill an innocent man?" The judge abruptly interrupted the defense attorney. "Much stronger arguments must be presented in favor of bail, Mr. Pearson." Samantha watched Gareth during this exchange of remarks. His face remained impenetrable, but when the prosecutor mentioned that Andrew knew the truth, something twitched in his eyes. After half an hour of deliberation, the judge ruled. The court denies bail. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. A preliminary hearing is scheduled in 2 weeks. As Gareth was being led away from the courtroom, Samantha noticed him trying to catch his son's gaze. Andrew sat with his head down, and Veronica was crying quietly beside him. After the meeting, Samantha approached them. "Mrs. Thibodeau, Andrew, could you give me a few minutes?" "Of course, Detective," Veronica replied, blotting her eyes with her handkerchief. They were seated in a small cafe across from the courthouse. Veronica removed her veil, revealing a haggard face. Andrew twirled the coffee cup in his hands absently, not looking up. "I know this isn't easy for you right now," Samantha began. "You have no idea how much," Veronica replied quietly. "In 1 week, we lost everything." "I met with Judge Williams," the detective continued. "He told me that Gareth consulted with him the day before the murder." Andrew looked up for the first time. "What?" "Judge Williams said that Gareth showed him the results of the private investigator's investigation. He hired someone to dig into Maria's past." "Jesus!" Veronica whispered. "So he planned the whole thing. The judge tried to talk him out of his rash actions, but Gareth was sure he was doing the right thing." Samantha watched Andrew's reaction carefully. "He killed her because he couldn't accept it." Andrew's voice sounded agonized. "It all boils down to this. He couldn't accept that I loved a woman who was transgender. He seemed protective of you," Samantha noted cautiously. "Protective?" Andrew laughed bitterly. "How can you protect a man by killing someone he loves? How can you protect by destroying his life?" "His values from another time," Veronica said quietly. He saw the world in his own way, but that doesn't justify what he did. "Did you know about Maria's past?" the detective asked. "Yes," nodded Veronica. "Andrew told me after the engagement. EA found it hard to accept at first, but then I saw how happy it made my son, the way they look at each other, and I realized that nothing else mattered. And your husband couldn't understand that?" Gareth was too deeply rooted in his beliefs. To him, family honor, the continuation of the lineage, are more than just words. It's at the core of his worldview. "Has he tried to talk to you?" Samantha turned to Andrew. "Yes." Andrew clenched his fists. "Came to our house, showed pictures, yelled that Maria was born a man, like I didn't know that." "Did you tell him you knew the truth?" "Of course, and I could see how it shook him. He couldn't believe I'd deliberately chosen to go down that path. Thought Maria had tricked me or, I don't know, bewitched me." "She really was special." Veronica put her hand on her son's shoulder. "She was the most genuine, the most real person I knew." Andrew's voice trembled. "And now she's gone, and I don't know how to move on." Samantha looked at them, mother and son, crushed by grief but maintaining their dignity. She asked a few more questions about the days leading up to the murder, then said goodbye, promising to keep them informed as the case progressed. Leaving the cafe, she headed to the station, where a conversation with Gareth awaited her. The defendant's lawyer had agreed to the conversation in the presence of his client. In the interrogation room, Gareth sat upright with his hands folded on the table. Despite his prison garb, he maintained the posture of a man accustomed to authority and respect. "Detective," he nodded as Samantha entered the room. "Mr. Thibodeau," she sat down across from him. "I'm willing to answer your questions, although I don't think there's anything unclear about this case. I want to understand why you did it. The truth, not the trial version." Gareth looked at her for a long moment, then asked, "Do you have children, Detective?" "No." "That's a pity. Then you'll find it hard to understand. When you have a child, you see him as an extension of yourself, of your kind, of your values. You want the best for it. You want to protect it from mistakes. Maria couldn't be called a mistake. She was talented, kind, loving." "Marco," Gareth corrected. "His real name was Marco. Her name was Maria," Samantha said firmly. "She lived as a woman, felt like a woman. That's a delusion contrary to nature itself. No surgeons, no hormones, no makeup can change what's inherent at birth. Your son didn't think so. My son was blinded. He's always been sensitive, vulnerable to manipulation." "That doesn't sound like manipulation," Samantha objected. "If Maria had wanted to manipulate, she would have hidden her past, but she was honest with Andrew from the beginning. And with me, with our family, with the town. A lie is not only what is said, but also what is concealed. Your son loved her. He knew the truth and chose to be with her anyway. Love doesn't justify everything, Detective. There are deeper foundations to life, duty, honor, legacy. And for those basics, you chose to kill a man?" Gareth leaned forward. "I was protecting my family from a deception that would have destroyed it from within. Yes, I overstepped the law of man, but there are laws more ancient, more profound. That is no excuse in the eyes of the law. Do you realize that? I am willing to take responsibility for my actions, but I have no remorse for trying to save my family." "Save?" Samantha shook her head. "You destroyed it. Your son lost the woman he loved. Your wife is torn between loyalty to you and love for your son. And you sit in prison, accused of murder. That's no salvation, Mr. Thibodeau. In time, they'll understand," Gareth said stubbornly. "Do you really believe that? Or is it just a way to justify the irreparable?" Gareth didn't answer, turning his back to the wall. As Samantha left the interrogation room, she felt a heaviness in her heart. Gareth was not a bloodthirsty monster, but a man deeply rooted in his prejudices. A man who could not accept the changes in the world and in his own family. This made the tragedy all the more bitter. It was the result not of malice, but of an inability to understand and accept otherwise. A month and a half later, the trial began. Interest in the case has not waned. On the contrary, it has become a symbol of the conflict between traditional values and the modern understanding of identity and human rights. The courtroom was packed not only with local residents, but also with representatives of various organizations covering the trial for the whole country. Andrew sat in the front row, still pale and stooped. Next to him was his mother, still wearing mourning. Samantha took a seat at the prosecution table, preparing to testify. Gareth Thibodeau, dressed in an austere suit, looked collected and determined. He didn't avoid the public's gaze, looking directly at the jury, 6 men and 6 women representing a cross-section of Louisiana society. Prosecutor Davidson presented the charge, laying out the facts clearly and concisely. Gareth Thibodeau, upon learning that his sister-in-law was a transgender woman, planned and committed a murder motivated by prejudice and rejection. This murder is not only a crime against a human being, he concluded. It is a crime against the very idea of equality and human dignity. Attorney Pearson took the other side. Gareth Thibodeau is a respected businessman, head of a family, a man of principles. He was faced with a situation that challenged the entire value system on which his life had been built. He acted in a state of extreme emotional distress, believing he was protecting his family. Samantha, testifying, described the scene of the crime, presented evidence, surveillance footage, ballistics evidence, and the results of a search of Thibodeau's home. "Was this crime planned?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes," Samantha answered. Gareth Thibodeau had learned the truth about Maria a few days before the murder. He hired a private investigator, consulted with Judge Williams. This was not an impulsive act. Did the defendant express remorse after his arrest? No, he acknowledged the murder but insisted he acted properly. Andrew, called as a witness, could hardly contain his emotions. "I loved Maria. She was the brightest person in my life. And yes, I knew about her past from the beginning." "How did you know?" the prosecutor asked. "She told me herself when our relationship became serious, said she wanted there to be no secrets between us." "And how did you react?" "At first it was unexpected, but I saw the woman I loved in front of me. Her past was a part of her, but it didn't define her completely." "Did you inform your father of your wife's past?" "No, I knew he wouldn't understand. He's always been conservative in his views." "What happened when he found out the truth?" "He came to our house," Andrew gulped, "yelling, calling Maria a fraud, showing some pictures, said she was ruining my life, dishonoring the family." "Were you afraid he might hurt her?" "No," Andrew shook his head. "I knew my father was conservative, but I never thought he was capable of. I couldn't imagine him." His voice trailed off, and the judge called a recess. When the hearing resumed, Veronica Thibodeau took the witness stand. Her testimony was measured, full of pain for her husband and son at the same time. "Gareth was always a man of principle," she said. "For him, family honor, tradition was more important than anything else. When he learned the truth about Maria, it shook the foundations of his worldview." "Did you know he was capable of violence?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Veronica answered firmly. "In 35 years of marriage, I never once saw Gareth raise a hand against anyone. He was strict but fair. I still can't believe that he—" He didn't finish the sentence, lowering her gaze. Gareth, speaking in his defense, was calm and collected. I don't deny that I shot Maria LeBlanc, but I acted in defense of my family, my values. I faced a deception that threatened everything that was sacred to me." "You don't consider your act a crime?" the prosecutor asked. "I regret the pain I caused my son, but I cannot regret an act I thought necessary." The testimony of witnesses, experts, and defense attorneys continued for several days. Finally, the jury retired to reach a verdict. Their deliberation lasted only 4 hours. "Guilty," the jury foreman announced, and the courtroom exploded with noise. Judge Matthews, after waiting for silence, announced, "Gareth Thibodeau, the jury has found you guilty of first-degree murder. Given the aggravating factors of premeditation and a motive for the crime based on prejudice, the court sentences you to life in prison without parole." As the sentence was read, Samantha watched Gareth's reaction. His face remained unperturbed. Only a shadow of pain flickered in his eyes for a moment as he looked at his son. Andrew didn't look at his father, his shoulders shaking finally. After the trial was over, Samantha met Andrew and Veronica at the courthouse exit. "Justice has been served," she said quietly. "Justice?" Andrew grinned bitterly. "It won't bring Maria back." "No, but perhaps it will prevent similar tragedies in the future." "You know," Andrew looked up, "the worst part is that my father still thinks he was right, that he was protecting me, protecting the family." "Some beliefs are too deeply ingrained," Samantha replied. "But the cost of those beliefs," he shook his head, "the price was too high." Veronica put her arm around her son's shoulders. "Let's go home, Andrew." "I don't have a home anymore," he replied quietly. "I'm selling the house on Maple Avenue. I'm leaving St. Albans." "But where to?" Veronica asked anxiously. "I don't know. Just away from here." Too many memories. Samantha watched them walk away. Mother and son left alone after a tragedy that could not have been prevented. Too much had been lost to prejudice, to an inability to accept what was out of the ordinary. That evening, Samantha sat on the veranda of the rental house for a long time, watching the storm clouds gather over Saint Aubin. She thought of Maria, whose life had been tragically cut short the moment she had found true happiness. Of Gareth, whose beliefs had cost him his family and his freedom. About Andrew, who had lost both his wife and his father. The story of the Tibodeau family might have been different if people had learned to see behind the labels and prejudices of real people with their dreams, fears, and hopes. If they realized that love and acceptance are stronger than fear of the unknown. Raindrops pounded on the roof, washing away the dust from the streets of Saint Aubin. But no rain could wash away the pain of loss and the bitterness of misunderstanding that had forever changed the lives of everyone connected to this tragedy. Samantha sighed and stood up. Tomorrow, she would return to New Orleans. Her temporary transfer was over. She would take with her the memories of this case, which had been a reminder to her of how destructive prejudice could be and how important it was to learn to accept others for who they were. The rain intensified, turning into a downpour. Samantha took one last look at the dark streets of the town, then closed the door and started packing.